Wonderful. Thank you for joining. We have Dawn Haywood today, the CEO of Windsor Academy Trust. Dawn, thank you so much for joining our conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute privilege to speak with you.
We are starting off a day where we're going to be talking about some of the elements that high-performing trusts have across various ways of looking at that. We're going to be talking about parental engagement, pupil well-being, and other elements. And we wanted to kick this conversation off with you because Windsor is one of the trusts that has had the highest recognition in the Edurio Awards. So for context, Edurio Awards is something that we introduced last year, where we have recognized the trusts or their schools that have had the highest recognition from their staff, pupils, or parents across a set of metrics. Windsor has had really good achievements across all the different awards categories that we've looked at. In particular, we've had Pupil Happiness Award awarded for a number of schools. We've had Parental Engagement Award as well for Windsor schools. And Windsor as a trust has been one of the top 10 trusts in the country as recognized by staff in terms of the perceived value of the trust. So congrats to you and the team on those achievements. What we wanted to pick your brain on is just understand a little bit about how you organize across the trust, how you lead, what kind of things you look for and try and improve, in hope that not all of it, but some of it might apply for the trusts that have joined us today, each in their unique circumstances. Before we do that, Dawn, can you just tell a little bit more about yourself and Windsor and what's the journey of your trust?
Thanks, Ernest. And it's been an absolute privilege to partner with Edurio, and the insights you've given us from staff, parents, and our students have been deeply helpful in helping us to understand where we are and continue the journey of improvement for all in our family. So I think, so I'm Dawn Haywood. I have the privilege of being the CEO of the Windsor Academy Trust family, just 4 years now as CEO of the Windsor Academy Trust family. And in essence, we're a family of 15 schools across 5 different local authorities, all across the West Midlands region, a mixture of primary and secondary schools with a significantly higher than national proportion of disadvantage, but equally a significantly high proportion of just cultural richness across our family of schools.
Thank you. And if we look at you in the leadership role, what do you define success as for your trust? What are the things that you're trying to make sure you make progress in?
Yeah, so I suppose the simplest way to describe this is, in the words of Simon Sinek, we really focus on the success first and foremost being defined by our why, by our moral purpose. That's our North Star. Then secondly, our success defined by how we do things, which is in essence our culture. And then third, the definition of success around what we actually do. So I suppose if we start with our why, that's to unlock academic and personal potential for children. So everything we do, our North Star, our definition of our reason for being, and our definition of success for our reason for being is the extent to which we're unlocking children's academic potential and their personal potential. And so I suppose there are a whole range of ways of measuring that. Of course, the national exams and tests are really important in determining success with academic potential, but it's equally more than that. It's the extent to which children feel empowered in the learning process, and certainly some of the metrics we have around metacognition and self-regulation for young people. So we're really growing young people as learners and their ability to self-regulate and lead their own learning. So that's really important to us. But on the personal potential side, again, there's a whole mixture of qualitative and quantitative measures that we use there, whether they are the Edurio surveys, pupil happiness, for example, well-being, enjoyment, engagement in school, but equally some of the measures around the percentage of children that are engaged in participation, enrichment, leadership, hours of volunteerism, the pledge, cultural capital building experiences. So those are, I suppose, our headline determination of success. First and foremost, are we unlocking children's academic and personal potential? Then we go on to our culture. So the culture is really measured through the perception surveys of staff, parents, and students. So is it a place where staff and children and parents feel like they belong? Do they feel a value in belonging to the family? Are we living our values that we have set out as a family? Are we behaving in alignment with the values that we have and the way in which we succeed? And empowerment is really important within that. So those are, that's where the surveys in particular give us really great data and insights into the strength of our culture or the strength of our how, using Simon Sinek's language. And then we go on to the what we do. Well, our what we do is defined really by our 5 big moves. The first one is around students, so that relates back to the academic and personal potential of children. The second one is our staff. The third one is society. Again, our civic work. The fourth one is sustainability and leaving the world in a better place. And the final one is around the system and the extent to which we are both learning from others in the system, as I have with many other trust CEOs and other leaders across the country. And that's absolutely fantastic that we're able to help each other to do that. And I feel deeply proud and privileged that we're able to both learn from each other, but equally to help shape the system, whether that's the way in which we influence each other, but equally the extent to which we're able to influence policy across the country as well. So I suppose our definition of success is very much one of our why, our moral purpose, our how, our culture, and our what we do in terms of our 5 big moves.
Thank you. And yeah, really, really nice to see that described in these multiple layers that all interact with each other. I guess I would be interested in understanding how easy is it to balance some of this, for example, the broader aspects of pupil personal potential in a time where there's real pressures on things like Ofsted, where there's inspection needs. You also have the progress measures and attainment measures, some very hard measures and clear measures that are prioritized by the regulators. So how do you find capacity or time, both for yourself, but also within the school teams, when there's so much pressure on some of those elements that the entire system is looking at?
So I suppose it all comes back to your first question around our definition of success. And I think we've always had the view that we do what is right to unlock children's academic and personal potential. That's at the heart of everything that we do. And I think we then trust that if we're doing the right things, then Ofsted takes care of itself. We certainly don't do school improvement for Ofsted. We do school improvement to do the right things for children. And if we're doing the right things for children, we also just happen to be then successful through the Ofsted inspections that our schools have. So I think that it's also having the mental model and mindset that unlocking children's academic and personal potential are interdependent. They're not independent of each other. For me, it's not an either or, it's an and. And we know, for example, we know that when children attend, they have a much higher probability of being successful academically. We also are getting better at learning around the fact that if children have a sense of purpose, if children feel like they belong, if children are engaged in enrichment activities, engaged in leadership and volunteerism, if they're getting cultural capital building experiences, then they're more likely to attend. And if they're more likely to attend, they're more likely to have the academic outcomes. So we're getting better and better and better, I think, at understanding the correlation, not necessarily the causality, but some of the correlation between the unlocking personal potential work that we're doing with the extent to which that's unlocking academic potential and vice versa. And I think that really speaks to the government narrative, which I'm really excited about, of breaking down the barrier between background and success, so that in schools all children achieve and thrive. Well, for us, that achieve is academic potential, the thrive is personal potential. So it's really exciting to know we're at a time where we can really understand the interdependence of personal and academic potential achieving and thriving. So
Brilliant.
I think over time, we're just trying to get a bit smarter around some of the regression analysis we're doing to see the correlation between some of those factors. But equally, then you can start to extend that out. We know that children, we don't unlock their academic and personal potential unless we've got great staff. And staff are thriving within their roles. Equally, we know that children don't exist independently of the communities in which they belong. They don't spend their time in school all of the time. They spend their time in the community. So again, that civic work we do is so fundamental, both for the communities we serve, but also to help unlock children's academic and personal potential. The sustainability work is just the right thing to do. It matters to children, and it's important we leave the world in a better place for future generations. And equally, it doesn't matter whether children go to our school or any school in the country. Our job as educators and leaders of trust is to ensure that the system thrives. So there's that notion of, unlocking the trust dividend, the civic dividend, and the system dividend. They're all interdependent.
Thank you. Those are beautiful words and really inspiring to me, and I'm sure to many others. So as a trust leader, you have this vision and you've been able to translate that into these clear layers of the why, the how, and the what. Now, in the day-to-day for a primary head where there is falling roles, financial issues, deficits, etc., it can be easily forgiven that can slide to the background. So I'd love if you were able to tell a little bit more about how you organize the team, and I mean the central team and the school team as well, and how do you communicate as a leader to make sure that your vision is able to be lived by everybody across the trust?
Yeah, so I suppose the first place that is communicated is really within our strategy. So we're very intentional about our must do and our aspire to do deliverables for each of the five big moves within our strategy that I've already articulated. But equally, we then have a very clear conception of quality around each of those that are set out in our school transformation model. And what we're then able to do is to evaluate ourselves or self-evaluate ourselves as a whole family of schools and as individual schools, both horizontally and vertically. So we can see how well we're doing across each of our areas of conception of quality, whether it's, for example, how well are children achieving? How well are we unlocking their personal potential? We can see what that's like both vertically across a whole school, but equally weekly, we can see what it's like horizontally across every single school in the trust. I suppose it's like a heat map around our conception of quality. So I suppose everything we do is built into our planning and our self-evaluation and being deeply intentional about what success looks like and what that conception of quality is. And then we organise our staff around it. So how do we enable that to happen? Well, we enable that to happen by giving people a deep sense of empowerment and time to enact those outcomes, I suppose, to deliver those outcomes. So if you look at the executive team, we have a member of the executive team who leads each of our 5 big moves. Clearly, we also have people who lead our finances and resources as well, because that's deeply important. That's an enabler within our strategy as opposed to a big move itself. So we enact our executive team. Our directorates then are against those, and the rest of our central team are structured within those directorates. And in the school leadership teams, there is somebody on the senior leadership team who leads each of those big moves within the school team. And then we have at a board level, we have champions for each of them. Equally, we ensure that there's a committee that provides scrutiny against each of them, as well as the holistic board overview. So you can see when we have an executive team, so on Wednesday, we have our executive team, and the agenda is structured around our 5 big moves. So as are all school leadership teams. So we're deeply clear and intentional about what success looks like. And then we structure our strategy, our planning, our self-review, and our people capacity and deployment around them.
And I'm intrigued by the horizontal lens which you mentioned, and I personally find that to be a very, very important element in school improvement processes, because when you speak the same language across trust, then collaborating becomes so much more powerful. It's so much easier to work with everybody. Did schools have to go through a lot of change to treat the moves in the language that Windsor wants it to, or wants to align the heat map around, or did that come organically?
Yeah, so I suppose so we involve our staff is the quick answer. So we are just at the end of our current strategy period. It went from up until 2025, from 2022. We've now just developed our 2030 strategy. And the process by which we have been through, it's taken us over a year to develop the strategy. It's involved, obviously, the executive team and a number of strategy days and sessions. It's involved the whole board in 2 board development sessions and strategy days at various points throughout 2 different points throughout the year. It's involved all senior leaders at 3 different stages throughout the year. And we've also involved all staff twice as we've developed the strategy. So it's never something that's kind of developed in a cupboard by a few people and then launched to staff. It's something that we take, the voice of our staff deeply seriously, because they have skin in the game, because they've been part of developing it. And in fact, the most useful sessions we've had in developing the strategy have been the sessions where all staff have been able to contribute to it.
Fantastic. And you spoke about how in the exec team and the board there are leaders for the big moves. Who very practically, who owns the alignment of that? Who owns the overall design of the heat map, of aligning those different elements? Is that within the school improvement team, the operations team? Is that with you? How does that sit?
Yeah, so I suppose the simplest way to describe it is we have a headline deliverables. So we look at the headline deliverables in each of the executive team meetings, and we look at the coherence across those and the interdependencies. So we can see, so for example, when we did the staff survey, lots and lots to be proud of, but we knew that one of the things that was impacting some of our metrics for staff was, in a few of the schools, staff's perception of student behaviour. So we then needed to ensure that we were doing a really great job at continuing to improve student behaviour. Then you see how that impacts staff perception and staff well-being, staff attendance, because they're interdependent. So the executive team and at the board, we share the headline deliverables on a very regular basis. And so we're constantly ensuring that there's coherence and interdependence with everything that we do.
Fantastic. And You spoke about some of the elements that are directly related to the staff, pupils, parents, so the elements of the day-to-day business of the trust. But you also mentioned bigger words like society, sustainability. Um, for you as a leader, how do you allocate your time between in trust and civic or system, and how do you think about that dilemma, which is not always easy to look outside of the trust when there's so much happening inside?
Yeah, so I think, so I suppose again, I would just go back to mental model and mindset, and that nothing sits in isolation. And I think there's a beautiful quote by oh Martin Luther King, where he says, "Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." God, I just remember that off the top of my head, but it speaks to the interdependence of things. And I think that that's something we always keep at the top of our mind. So for me as a CEO, I know that I need to have any credibility with anything we're doing with civic partners or with other trust leaders and even the government. We need to make sure we're doing a really good job in our schools and continue to improve the lives and hopes and dreams and opportunities for the children that we serve. But equally, we know that the civic work that we do, so particularly for us, we work with 5 different NHS trusts. We have a strong commitment to our civic work. And that's because, again, there are so where educational inequalities exist, so do health inequalities, they coexist. So there is something I think that's really important in the work that I certainly do with NHS trust CEOs in understanding where the I suppose the sweet spot is, the mutual point of interest, where if we can ensure that we reduce health inequalities, we can reduce educational inequalities, and where we're reducing educational inequalities, we can help to reduce health inequalities. But equally, from a system perspective, so, another area around civic is the way in which trusts work together or schools work together, irrespective of the responsible body that just happens to oversee those schools, whether they're in a multi-academy trust, school trust, a diocese, or indeed local authority maintained schools. It really doesn't matter where children go to school. It's our duty to work together to help all children to be the best that they can be. And so I think, certainly for me, and then the system work, as I said, trust dividend, civic dividend, system dividend, they're all interconnected. So I know that the better our schools are, the better our leaders are. I spend quite a lot of time coaching leaders, and equally I'm coached myself because we're all learners and can continue to get better. That means that you're building real capacity and capability within, but equally, the more you give, the more you learn. So the more we work with civic partners, the more we learn and the more it's benefiting both of those civic actors or partners. But equally, the more we give to the system, the more we learn from the system as well. So I suppose it's, if you have a kind of reframed a mental model that it's not either trust or civic or system, but actually it's and for the benefit of all.
Thank you so much, Dawn. As you say, we are all learners, and we've been privileged to be able to learn from you today. That is all we have time for in this session. But thank you so much, Dawn, for sharing your story and the story of Windsor.
Pleasure, and thank you.